Well, hello, welcome back. Toy Thursday with Johnny Tiger on December 1st, 2022. Wow, it is coming up really quick to Christmas, aka my birthday, aka the end of the year. I don't know about the rest of you, but for me, 2023 has really been a roller coaster, and the year just seemed to have flied past so quickly. So many things happen, almost like uh, one after another, and it has been a year that is anything but boring. So while I was researching to see what is a special day today, I thought that, well, today was wear a dress day, but if I just go off of that, it would be a little bit too easy. I mean, I can just get a lot of female action figures and show you guys some random action figures in dresses. But today happens to be something even more special. Today is a National Civil Air Patrol Day in the U.S. What is that, you may ask? Well, the Civil Air Patrol is a civilian branch of the U.S. Air Force. First, they came together as a bunch of civilians trying to help patrol the border and keep everyone safe during 1941. Finally, during 1960, on December 1st, 1966, the President of the United States officially declared this day to be the day to celebrate those brave men and women that came together to defend the country. So, December 1st is National Civil Air Force Patrol Day, or Air Patrol Day. Uh, so today, I have just the action figure. Actually, to call him an action figure is a little bit too generous, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Do you guys remember the little army man that we play with when we were children? Well, if you were born a little bit later, like in the 2000s, you probably don't remember those. I don't know. Do they still do army man? I mean, when I was little, I remember I had hundreds of those little guys. They're like 2 inches tall and usually made by I don't even know what those materials were. They were not really like high quality plastic or anything. They were kind of a soft plastics that were really bendy, and they were pre-posed little soldier statuette, little soldier guys that have guns and rifles and all that stuff. And they were not articulated. They were definitely not action figures. They were kind of pre-posed, and they all had a base that they were glued on. And you could get other things to go with your army man. You could get helicopters and cannons and tanks and stuff like that. Not that they could actually interact with those things, because like I said, these were not articulated action figures. These were little, tiny little figurines. Um, the figure I'm going to show you guys today, for me at least, really remind me of those little army men. It's like the little army man from my childhood on steroid. Now, I have more than once spoken about the king of action figures in the 90s, and if you have been following my videos, then you know I'm talking about Todd McFarlane, the guy who created the Spawn comic book, Spawn the character, and have brought some of the most detailed, uh, fun, and hardcore adult level collectibles in the 90s. I mean, I can go on and on about just how far ahead of his time Todd McFarlane was in action figure design, action figure making, character development, and how he was so into trying different kind of properties, even original properties. All that combined to make him the king of action figures in the 90s. However, in the early 2000s, we hit a bump in the road, aka probably one of the darkest moments in my personal action figure collecting history, which is to say, Todd McFarlane went off the deep end in a really big way. Yeah, I mean, if you have been collecting in the 2000s, you know what I'm talking about. This guy, who was so good at giving us hyper detailed action figures that everybody loved in the 90s, suddenly started to make very perplexing business decisions and choices that all but guarantee him to be dethroned by other companies. Rather than uh, continuing with the Spawn action figure line, which everybody loved. Well, okay, maybe not everybody, but a lot of people loved. And continuing with experimenting with adding articulations and interesting characters, Todd McFarlane suddenly decided that he wanted to make action figures based on baseball players, football players, hockey players, and military personnel. Now, I'm not saying that these were bad figures. I'm saying that when you have lines that proven to be very popular, like Spawn, like uh, your maybe your dragons, the dragons were really nice, and you have some lines that were very promising, like Warriors of the Zodiac uh, and Movie Maniac. Why in the world would you abandon those lines and start making action figures that no one was asking for? It's like Todd McFarlane was so confident in his own ability to sell action figures that he decided that he was just going to be stubborn. He was just going to make action figures that he would like, and people were going to buy it regardless. Unfortunately, he was wrong. In the short span of 3 or 4 years, Todd McFarlane pretty much faded into obscurity and did not return to compete against the top dogs until maybe 16 years later. But this little dark moment in Todd McFarlane's toy making history aside, uh, he did crank out some interesting looking figures during this time of very perplexed decision making. Uh, the military action figures, for example, they were actually quite nice. However, they were plagued with problems and design flaws. Honestly, if he wanted to make military action figures, I really had no problem with it. I, if anything else, I was really looking forward to it because all the time I was growing up, I lamented the fact that G.I. Joe action figures were 3 inches tall and would not blend in with my other collection. So when I heard that Todd McFarlane was going to make 6 inches tall soldiers and military characters, I was excited. Like, okay, I'm not going. It's they're not G.I. Joe, but they're close enough. Like I would finally have proper looking soldiers in my collection. But then, when they finally got made, they were nothing but disappointments. Allow me to introduce you to the Air Force Combat Engineer from McFarlane's military line. Whether it's sweeping for explosives such as landmines or building bridges, the combat engineers were always there in the front line, making sure that the Allies can advance without being harassed by opposition forces. Yeah, he looks pretty good, right? This guy looks pretty good for a 20-year-old action figure. And yes, definitely remind us of those little army men, except in this case he's 6 inches tall and very well detailed. The Air Force combat engineer, and what you see is what you get. There's no other pose you can get him into. What little joints there are on this figure is they're only there so the pieces can be put together at the factory. Uh, there's no leg articulation. There's no uh, anything useful that you can change his pose. He's always stuck in that pose. And what's worse, he's stuck on that base he's standing on. Like all the McFarlane military figures, you can get these guys either in Caucasian skin tone or African American skin tone. So yeah, at least he was inclusive. Although I have to ask, where are the Asians? Where are the brown people? But anyway, at least he got the black and white going. Everything's very well sculpted. The details are really good, from the rifle in his hand to the wrinkles in his uniform, and the backpack on his back, and the tiny little attachments and gear that he has all over his body. The figure comes with a rifle that you cannot remove. It's pretty much stuck in there in his hand. Like I said, there's no other posing option. What you see is what you get. Originally, he also came with a long minesweeper, something that he used to detect the mines, landmines with. But that has long since been broken. The plastic used for these guys was really, really brittle. So if you're not careful, things going to start breaking, especially after 20 years. He comes with a base. Now, normally, I'm very interested. I'm very impressed by some a base like this. It's not just a generic base like a lot of other action figures that come with today. This is a kind of a detailed base about the size of your hand, so it's quite big, and it is a kind of details a desert landscape with a shrub, I guess, and rock and sand. So it's kind of detailed looking and it's pretty cool. However, the figure is displayed in a way that he cannot go without his base. Most of the time, when you see action figures, uh, how it's designed is there would be a hole at the bottom of their feet, and that hole would fit into a peg that come out of the base. So even if you don't want to use the base, the action figure can still stand, no problem. However, in the case of the combat engineer, the Air Force combat engineer, and many of the other military figures by McFarlane, the peg is at the bottom of the feet that fit into holes on the base, which means without the base, your figures cannot stand because they got a rod sticking out their feet. Now, what possessed McFarlane to make that kind of a design decision, I will never know. Now, normally, I really applaud what McFarlane tried to do. He was very confident in what he wanted to do, and so he decided, yeah, I like military figures, I like baseball figures, so I should make them. Cool. It's his own company. Yeah, he has the right to do that. So what gets me in the end is, okay, if you want to make the figures you like, that's fine. As your loyal fan, I'm totally behind that. But why do you have to make it in such a way that you dictate how we can display them? Yeah, I mean, yeah, go ahead and make baseball figures and basketball figures and military figures, but you at least need to make them first be able to be integrated into our other collection, and two, give us the liberty to pose them how we like. I'm not asking them to have 22 or 32 points of articulation. No, you don't need to have that much. But at least be able to get 3 or 4 different poses out of them. At least be able to get them to stand without needing their base. That's not too much to ask, especially for action figures being made in the early 2000s. We have long gone beyond the limitation posed by technology in the 90s. Honestly, the McFarlane military action figures really only is there to serve to make me kind of sad when I look at them. Why do they make me sad? Am I sad because they represent the brave men and women that die for our country? Nah, not quite. I mean, these were not tailored after real people. They were just random generic soldiers. Uh, they make me sad because of the possibility and opportunity that was lost because of the poor decision making Todd McFarlane was making at the time. Like I said, at that time, there were no other lines, 6-inch lines of military action figures. So if he only had the foresight to make them a little bit more user friendly, a little bit more articulated, posing friendly, if he made action figures rather than statues, then he would be the first person to come up with a 6-inch line of highly detailed military action figure. And then when 17, 18 years later, when G.I. Joe action figures became 6 inches and there was Action Force and Fortnite and other military themed action figures, those Todd McFarlane action figures would have integrated so well. Let me quickly bring in a G.I. Joe guy to stand beside this guy. You guys can see what I mean. Here we have Major Blood from Hasbro's G.I. Joe classified line standing beside the Todd McFarlane's combat Air Force engineer. The two action figures are 20 years apart in age, but they're almost the same size. In fact, if the Air Force engineer and the other Todd McFarlane military action figures could be articulated, they would really fill out the rank of your G.I. Joes today. But because of some weird decision making, they will always be something that caught between action figures and statues, something that could have been but never was. Thank you for checking out today's Toy Thursday. We'll be back again tomorrow for Fitness Friday. And don't forget, if you want, check out my Twitter and Instagram at JohnnyTiger1981. At JohnnyTiger1981.